Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Lion, the Way, and the War, where we discuss Jesus, his church, and the spiritual battle that surrounds us all. My name is Craig Allison, and I'll be your host. All right. Thanks for joining us on another episode. On today's episode, we have Emily Bruce, who is from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Emily's a junior at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga and is majoring in vocal music education. After she graduates, she hopes to find a job teaching choir or music for middle school, perhaps elementary school. Just, I think, whatever opens up for her, she's gonna grab it. Her hobbies include music, sleeping, and reading her Bible. And she is beginning her first year serving as a student ambassador at the Christian Student Center. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
What in the world? Sleeping as a hobby. How is that even a thing?
That's all I have time to do in my day. That's all I can get done.
I mean, just such lofty aspirations.
And that's a high bar for me. All right.
Hey, what are you going to do today? Well, I hope to be sleeping. I guess, I mean, most college students are sleep deprived, so that makes sense, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So first year as a student ambassador, you're now, what are we, 2 weeks into school?
Less than.
Yeah. I'm familiar with Welcome Week, which is just a crazy busy time where the student ambassadors are doing all sorts of planning and events, and basically you don't sleep for that whole week.
Yep.
How are you liking, this is your first year, how are you liking being a student ambassador?
I mean, it's fun. It's fun getting to interact with the students and host the events and see everyone having a great time. But also the first 2 weeks, it's like, wow, haven't had a break since almost 2 weeks now. We've just been working for prepping Welcome Week, doing Welcome Week. We had events all weekend, and now we're just keeping going.
Yeah, I know it's super, super busy. If I would have told you a couple years ago when we first met, hey, you're going to be a student ambassador one day, what would you have said to me?
I don't know.
I mean, did you imagine yourself being a student ambassador?
No, definitely not.
Okay. We had some really good conversations in my office.
Yeah.
And one of the things that always impressed me about you, Emily, was that you're a serious student of the Bible. Like, you had lots and lots of questions. Some really hard questions. You would come in my office, I'm like, what in the world? Where did you get that from? Like, why are you even asking me that question? So, but I did appreciate that. I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing, your family, kind of what's led you to, I guess, where you're at right now.
Oh.
We don't have to get too personal, but just, like, fill us in.
Yeah, I grew up, we were a church family, I suppose. My dad was a pastor before I was born, mm-hmm. and we kind of fell out of routine going to church for a while, and then I went to church, some really weird churches mm-hmm. for a while, and then when I was in high school, or 8th grade, my friend from school started bringing me to the Assemblies of God church down the road, and I went there through all of high school and started going on Sunday mornings when I had a car and could get there by myself. And then when I came to college, I didn't go to church at all mm-hmm. for probably at least a year, and then I started going back again and ended up at the student center and here.
Yeah, I'm interested that you've got kind of a diverse background as far as just your denominational backgrounds and some of the stuff. So you've been able to see some of the differences in our faith background versus some of the faith background experiences that you've had.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of a cool thing that you bring to the table that we may get into. It just depends on how weird and awkward this gets for us. So yeah. We'll see what happens. Right off the bat, is it hard to be a Christian at a secular university?
I mean, at times.
How so?
Well, not everybody here is Christian. Not everyone here believes the same way. And there's definitely, I mean, when you're young, people are figuring out what they believe and very aggressively about what they believe. Yeah. They don't just think something. It's the end all be all end of the world if someone else doesn't think the same way. And that can be a tough place when those views aren't so Christian. But also we're still in the South. So yeah. it's still, we're accepted. We don't have to deal with a lot of super major issues. It's just, it can be hard to deal with people sometimes.
Yeah. Interesting thing that you said just a second ago with, it's like the be all, like if you don't agree with somebody, that doesn't seem to apply for like the Christian narrative being pushed is the one that seems to be at odds a lot of times with the current culture. And so we're supposed to accept, and you jump in here and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm kind of reading this from the outside, but we're called to accept and be tolerant and be loving and be all these things to any lifestyle, any choice. And if that person that's living that lifestyle finds out you're a Christian and you in any way disagree with them, all of a sudden it's, the gloves have come off, and now it's like see, this is why I don't like Christianity, because you are so hateful and so intolerant, and then the narrative continues. Is that accurate at all, or am I just completely?
I mean, yeah, it definitely depends on the person. If it's like a friend and they find out maybe you don't agree with them on things that are really important to them, it's like the whole relationship has changed now. Like you can't be friends the same way anymore.
I guess
a lot of people.
Maybe what I'm trying to get at is it's okay to dog Christianity. Everybody can dog Christianity, and everybody should be fine with that. But if a Christian says anything out of turn towards like our current society, current cultural stuff that's going on, LGBTQ issues, anything along those lines that are like the current hot topic issues, we'll call them, transgender stuff. We're not allowed to say anything about that. But other people can talk about how crazy Christians are.
It depends on what circle you're in. Certainly, like online, it's like you can say anything and people can just dog on you because you're not face to face. I think that's why it's important to have real life conversations, because it can't go that way in real life unless you're really like if I walked into a club meeting for like that's everyone believes a certain way and I start saying something different, I'm going to get dogged on. But, in just like regular conversation, that doesn't happen so much. It's the internet that like creates this thing where it's like, ugh, I can say whatever I want now. You can't, I don't have to say it to your face.
Yeah. So. Okay. So what brought you to the Student Center? What was it about the Student Center that attracted you?
My boyfriend was there.
Okay. So I thought that might be where you were going to go with that. Okay, but what's kept you there? Because he for those that are listening that don't know, so your boyfriend was a student ambassador while you dated.
Yeah.
Which is interesting that you wanted to be a student ambassador after seeing, because it's not the easiest job, right? So he probably had things to say about it, but you wanted to do it anyway. So what I guess what kept you there?
Okay. I think for when I first started coming around, it really was just he was there. Like I wasn't close to anybody, and it was just like, well, this is what he has to do. I want to be hanging out with him. And then as you get like start growing relationships with people, and then realizing like really engaging with the word like throughout the week was important. Like I enjoyed learning. And then relationships started growing with people, and it's like, well, I enjoy being here, and there's free coffee, and I can study, and it's fun.
Yeah. So you keep coming back to that word relationship, like we were just talking about. Well, that probably that type of thing is not going to be as, I guess, happening as much as long as you have if you've built a relationship with somebody, and I think you're hitting on a key, one of the key points that I keep hearing from college age students is that. There's a tendency to be more withdrawn and more on the social media apps or alone in your dorm room, not interacting with a person so much. And the student center, the Christian Student Center is the opposite of that. It's us relating to one another. So how has that influenced your time at college? Because hang on a second. Sorry. Because I don't know. You may have two different things to compare it to. The pre CSC Emily versus the CSC Emily of today. I don't know how personal you want to get, but but just whatever.
I'm a little lost in your question. What do you mean?
I am too.
What do you mean?
Okay, so we're talking about building relationships with
Okay.
people, okay, and how important that is for college students, and how a lot of college students have a tendency to be isolated and alone, versus what we have at the Student Center, which is like not that. So, how has that, I guess, impacted you and your college trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I feel like I can't say I was ever isolated and alone in college because when I started, I was in the marching band and I lived in the music dorms.
Yeah.
So we were all up in each other's business 24/7.
Yeah.
But it's a different community at the student center because, I mean, God is at the foundation of it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the difference. I mean, if I was an isolated college student, that would have been horrible. Yeah. I can't imagine. That was never me. But God being at the base of it really it changed me.
Right.
So.
Okay. In your experience, how successful are the college students today as far as staying, and I'm talking about Christians now, when they come to college, staying plugged into their faith while they're in college?
Majorly bad.
Okay.
Pretty bad.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because as we were kind of talking, before we started the show, we were discussing the fallout from your age group, your demographic, and despite the fact that if we just look at the ones that are they have the history of being raised in a church or in a church environment, they have some type of spirituality, some kind of background. That doesn't matter, because once they get to college, we're losing about 2/3 of them. They stop believing in God. They walk away from the church, but you're in that demographic. What is happening? What's the problem here?
For me, I think there's two things that made the difference when I got to college and I didn't go to church anymore. And the first one was a poor understanding of what sin is. Mm-hmm. I think growing up, a lot of church people, they don't mean in a bad way, but they lie to you about sin. And it's like, if you do this, your life is going to be terrible and all these bad things are going to happen. And the reality is, I got to college, I started partying and drinking, and there's negative side effects to it, but it wasn't the life fall apart immediately that I was told it was going to be. Yeah. I had a drink, and it wasn't like everything in my life changed and is horrible now. Yeah. And it's like, well, was any of it really true?
Right.
Because, when I was in high school, they had, in our high school girls group, I tell this story all the time because it makes me so upset. They had told this group of girls, if you have sex before you're married, no man will ever want you again. You'll never find a good Christian husband, nothing. That's a lie. Mm-hmm. So what happens when you go out and you do something stupid and you hook up with some guy at a party, and then the lie's not true anymore, and it's like, well, what else did they lie to me about? Yeah. The other thing is, it's like, I went to church for a long time, and they always told us, you just got to read your Bible and pray and go to church. but I didn't have any independence on that by the time I graduated.
Yeah.
I wasn't independently reading and understanding my Bible or understanding, like, it's easy to say read your Bible every day, but it's, when you've never done that before, it's like someone needs to help you be like, this is how you set aside time, and how do I understand this, and where do I start, and what do I actually do when I'm sitting down with my Bible in front of me? It's like, that was a big hurdle for me, like stepping back into faith was like, now I know the things, but I actually have to figure out how to do them as someone who's never done that before by myself.
Yeah. Okay, so for every one of you, there's two that come to college and they're like, oh, this is not as bad as I thought. Oh, I can party and there's no real, detrimental consequences. Well, we can talk about, some of that maybe, but what's getting missed with the other, like if we could back that up and have you experienced something that when you got to college, you didn't feel like you had been lied to. You had an accurate picture of maybe what sin was and what the consequences of sin and kind of like the reasons behind why some of those things might be said. What would be, I guess, the learning piece of that? Like what for the two people out of the three that do leave, you're beating the odds, right? So what would you change about the pre-college talks of, what's going on?
I think it's the understanding that why we're obedient to what it says in the Bible, why we refrain from sin and we turn from sin is a reaction to how much God loves us and how much his plan is good for us. It's part of faith is being loyal to God. And it's stepping back some of the fear-mongering, don't do it because it's bad and bad things will happen. And if you do bad things, you're no longer worthy of this and that. And it's like sin blocks you from God. That's true, but but God is going to help you overcome those things, and you're going to do it through that love. It's not for fear. The fear argument, I think, is a bad argument.
Yeah. And I see that. I see the coercive stuff, and there's not, a real understanding of, okay, so that sounds super, super frightening. And I can definitely see that, when you do get to college, you have those freedoms, you have those liberties to step out and experience different stuff, and the world doesn't fall apart. For some, it does.
Yeah.
For some, it does. They take a drink of alcohol, they get behind the wheel, and they kill a family.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Or, they end up pregnant the first time that they have sex, and now they've got a child and they're not ready to deal with that. And so they, one mistake leads to another mistake, and who knows, So, you do have those situations, and I can understand why you might have like parents or church leaders focusing solely on that as maybe as a scare tactic or whatever. But we're kind of skirting around the edge of something here that I think we need to kind of tease this on out because I think it's relevant, which is what's taking place before kids go to college. Like what's the teaching, what's the learning, how are things being talked about, how are our high school students being taught or given an opportunity to embrace and understand the love that God has for them, the grace that God has for them, the fact that he wants to be in relationship with us so badly. And then it's not a thing that we're reacting out of fear. We're reacting out of just genuine love, because we respect and love God so much that why would I do that kind of stuff, right? That seems to be kind of where you're going with this, as far as, maybe that got missed by the other 2 out of 3 people, and they didn't get that.
Yeah, there's so many kids, and they're good church kids, and they go to church and they participate, but have they built a relationship with God? Or do they just show up to church? Yeah. And I think it's tough because, you're older and you know what it's like to have a relationship with God, and you know what it's like. But when you're a teenager, you don't know anything.
Yeah.
But you know that you're being told to have a relationship with God. But what does that really mean? It's like, those are like the pieces that I feel like aren't there as
How
much.
do we do that though? So I mean, let's just say, imagine yourself with a daughter.
Yeah.
Right now, and they're in high school. They're fixing to graduate. How would that look different for your family? For the church you're going to. What would you be saying to the church leadership on how things need to look for your family and for your kids?
First of all, I don't have all the answers to this, but I think something that I think could be important is like, it's not just about teaching the Bible stories, but how do I read the Bible for myself? Like, the Bible is so intimidating. It is so hard to read the Bible. Like, it really is for the first time. Yeah. You don't really know what you're looking at. The language is weird.
Right.
It's like, can a high school student who's going off to college, can they sit down, open up a chapter of the Bible, read it, and understand what it's saying without you having to tell them? Because that's like, they can read their Bible all day, but what if they're not understanding anything?
Yeah.
They don't even know what they're reading.
Yeah. It's
like, those are important skills for like having a real, full, independent relationship with God. Going to church is so important, but having that happening all throughout the week on top of that, that's where like you're building a relationship with God. If you're not spending that time one-on-one, getting to know him and understanding him, it's like that's not a real relationship.
Yeah. So how have you progressed through that? Like, did you just get really super smart all of a sudden and could like start reading and understanding those things? Or, I mean, what were the things that you did that helped?
I started in January. I just have gone straight through the Bible. I started in Genesis, haven't skipped anything, have just gone through it however long it takes, which is like kind of awful at parts. Like, Deuteronomy is a horrible piece of literature. Like, it's good, but like it's not fun.
Yeah.
But it just, I've spent time and I've just done it, and you get better every time you do it. Yeah. Practice. But it can be hard figuring out how to set a schedule, especially in an adult life when you're doing school and work and all the things. Like, how do I schedule this in, which I know is like excuses, but it's a genuine question. It's like, how does this fit? This is a new thing to fit into my life.
Yeah. Does studying with other people benefit you at all, or do you prefer to read, just kind of study on your own?
I prefer to study on my own when I'm just reading straight through. But studying with other people is also really good. It can help you learn new ways to think about things that you didn't before.
Yeah. I mean, I know you would come to me with questions,
yeah.
and I'm assuming, you had read some stuff and you're like, what in the world is that about? And so then, and I think that, one of the things that I want to emphasize here is that gaining knowledge of the Bible, understanding knowledge of the Bible, we should never be embarrassed or ashamed when we don't know stuff, that we can go to people and say, hey, let's talk about this, and because I need to understand it better. Of course, that requires that there be some trust that you have in another person, because, they may not know. They may be just, saying things that they've been told that could be wrong or whatever. So it's that whole, digging together. And when I would do Bible studies with people, there's a lot of times, and still, I get asked questions. I'm like, wow, that's really hard. And so we kind of dig it through that together. And I'm not trying to make stuff up or say, well, I don't know who's told you that, but let me tell you what what the real truth is, and then I start spouting opinion or something like that. So there's that trust issue is important that you have that with somebody. What's kept you interested in staying plugged in? Like right now, why do you keep coming to church? Why are you a student ambassador? What's going on there that's got you more plugged in now?
That's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Well, I think first of all, starting to actually read the Bible was so life-changing for me, and that was it was awesome because it was the pieces fit together, a new clarity. And my life kind of did a whole 360 within the last 2 years. I came to college, just went absolutely wild, and then came all the way back around to not being crazy. Yeah. So I don't know, it was just that's the biggest piece, and then getting involved here has been awesome, especially over the past year, coming here regularly, and I know people and I have those relationships, and that also helps you just want to keep showing up.
Yeah. Do you have any perspective on, because I'd like to ask this question, especially to college students, because we lose so many, obviously. Yeah. What is it about churches and church leaderships and the way we do things? What keeps you interested in coming to Central Church of Christ rather than saying, I am not stepping foot in those doors again? And because a lot of college students, they'll go to a church, they'll visit a church, and they will never come back. So,
I mean, I think initially, it's the first time you step in, are people eager to meet you, or are people just staying to themselves in their groups? Because when you go to a church and the first thing that happens is that people just stay to themselves, it's okay, I'm never coming back here.
Right.
That's horrible.
You lose that opportunity.
Yeah.
You only have that first time to make that impression. Yeah.
Yeah, it's over at that point. Yeah. But I mean, I think having a culture that's open and honest is really important, where questions, you can freely question things. You can have honest conversations. Yeah. A lot of churches, Southern churches, it's there's some weird undertones of, oh, that person's, they asked that question. I don't, it's you're shamed. You can feel the shame. It's it's not out loud, but it's felt, especially when you're just, it's you fit the mold. Yeah. You don't ask the questions. You just believe what you're told, or else you're just not getting along the way that you want to.
How would a church know if they're that church that is we don't allow certain questions, or we don't want those questions asked? You need to fit this particular mold if you're going to fit in here. I mean, because I don't think there's any church leader out there listening to this show that is oh yeah, that's definitely us. We're the unwelcoming church who does not allow questions. I mean, I think every church and church leader would like to say, yeah, we're absolutely the most friendly, warm, welcoming. We're not afraid of questions. We are very accepting. We show a lot of grace. That doesn't mean we accept sin or are okay with sin, but we understand that everybody is flawed and broken, and we're all in this together, doing our best to work through this. How would a college student coming in with fresh eyes and fresh perspective tell a church, what if we're that church here at Central, how would we know that? How would I know that? So we could change it.
I mean, one thing is you can see it in your membership and who comes. You can see it at the student center. You can really see it. Is there diversity within the room?
Yeah.
And that means different things. Do people all think and look and dress the exact same way? Mm-hmm. And another thing is just thinking what would be the reaction in this room if someone of someone who wasn't expected came in. Are they going to sit by themselves in church? Are people going to avoid them after class? Like, because, I mean, maybe you don't want to think that way, but if you really think, like, specifically, like, hey, if like, we're downtown, if someone homeless came in, for a Sunday morning service, what's the reaction of the people? And if you're being honest, you can pinpoint what's going to happen. You know these people, and that's a tell.
Yeah.
You can see it if it's not necessarily accepting sin, but accepting people who don't fit the mold.
I think, because we are a downtown, Central Church of Christ is a downtown, so we have more, I guess, practice or experience dealing with that particular demographic. So I know, not to step on any toes, but if you live in a affluent suburb where it's all white people that are making a decent amount of money, and you have that type of, that layout, and then you have a person that is clearly, they haven't bathed in a while, and, they don't match your demographic, and they walk in, I can pretty much guarantee you the majority of the churches, you're going to have a lot of members there that are very uncomfortable with that. And so how do we change that? Like what needs to happen because we're all part of the larger body of Christ, right? I mean, I'm not just talking about Central by themselves. I love this interaction because I get to get feedback because we're a university campus church, and so I get to hear from your demographic. And you guys aren't afraid to say, "You guys are horrible." Why are you doing that? So stupid. Why? So, how do we get that feedback out there to other congregations? Like what? And I don't know. I'm asking you. This is like off the cuff. You may not have any like solutions or anything, but.
I don't know how we get the feedback back out there, but I know, I definitely have a more unique perspective on this because I grew up when I was a kid. We went to church. We went to a church that was in like the roughest area, like the on the news area of town, and we were serving that area. We were going out and doing outreach. We were inviting people in throughout the week. And so we spent a lot of time with people who are not walking into those churches and feeling accepted.
Right.
And I think that experience is important because when I talk, there are a lot, I know college students at the CSC right now who would not be comfortable in that situation. Yeah. They've never experienced it.
Right.
But once you've done it, it's like, wow, those were just regular people who have a different set of circumstances and a different set of experiences than I do. But you can always connect on a human level. Yeah. And there's so many times that I'm like, I wish I could like implant the experiences I had growing up working with all of these people into other people's brain. Because I'm like, if you had just seen it, then you would just know that it's like we have so much we could do and so many ways we can serve them because they're just people. But it's hard for people who've never done it, and I think a lot of churches who maybe have groups that have never experienced having to do outreach in groups that are a lot different than them should seek out opportunities to do that, because once you've seen it opens your eyes.
Yeah. So get out of their comfort zone kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's hard,
yeah.
But
yeah. So you're saying two really important key factors here for church leaders to know from the college perspective, to keep college students coming back. The first thing is be super friendly. Like go up, just swarm new people. And I guess that goes for more than just college students. I mean, if you've got a homeless guy coming in, make him feel like he's precious and he's wanted and he belongs and he's not going to be shamed or rejected. So that, I think that's a key thing. If your church is doing that, you're on the right track. And the second thing that you mentioned is what? Like, how would you because I'm having a hard time summarizing that second piece.
Like, be intentional about outreach, I guess. Getting the experience of getting out of your comfort zone is important. Yeah. I guess that's what I mean. Like, it's a lot of people expect Christians to feel higher than them, and it's like, you need lower yourself down, get on their level, serve them, and make those opportunities a priority, because you'll learn a lot. It'll change how you view people and how you treat people. And
Emily, that sounds a lot. I mean, what you just said, it sounds a lot like what Jesus was doing.
That's so true. It really does.
I mean, do we follow his example? Is that something we ought to be doing as churches? Is like relating to people like Jesus related to people?
I mean, we probably should.
I think you're right.
Probably should.
Yeah. Obviously, if you're listening, we're not trying to be irreverent at all. But I think what we're doing is emphasizing a point that when a lot of the churches are scratching their heads and they're wondering, why don't we have our young people coming back, or why aren't they staying, or this may be two critical factors, at least from a college person's perspective, on why you may not be hanging on to your college students as much. All right, we're gonna do final thoughts here. I would like for you, Emily, if you've got a favorite verse of Scripture. I know you probably have more than one, but if you've got one that you want to read and just kind of maybe explain why you like it.
Yeah, can I open the Bible?
Yes, go ahead.
Because I'm not going to remember all of the words. This is Romans 8:1. There is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit.
So what does that say to you? What does that mean to you?
It's talking about how once you're in Jesus, you are free, and you don't have to be weighed down by the shame of sin and the shame of things you did in the past. It's a new life when you walk with Jesus, and that's awesome. Good thoughts.
All right, folks. If you would like to email us, you can see our email right up here at the top of the screen if you're watching. Email us at thelionthewayandthewar@gmail.com. I am still collecting some mental health issues. That sounds weird. I do. I collect my own mental health issues that sometimes show out in ways I wouldn't want them to. No, if I'm planning on doing another show with a therapist, and so we're going to do kind of a question-answer thing. I don't know when that's going to be, but I'm looking for like mental health issue questions that you might have, and so send that to that email address. Also, consider if you want to be a sponsor of this show. And speaking of which, Ministry League has recently picked us up, and so they broadcast this podcast along with some other really great podcasts. So check Ministry League out. Download that. That's a great app to have on your phone. Until our next podcast of The Lion, the Way, and the War, love one another, be kind to one another, and remember, the creator of the universe loves you so much that he gave his only son up for you. Have a blessed day.